Let's start with some introductions from the four of us who are running this meeting today. So, hi everyone, I'm Laurie. I'm a Programmes Officer at Leeds Community Foundation. I'll hand it over to Martin.
Yeah, hi, I'm Martin Dean. I'm the coordinator of Healthy Holidays for Leeds Community Foundation. Nice to see you all this morning.
Fantastic. Amelia.
Hi everyone, Amelia Gunn, and I coordinate Healthy Holidays for the Council.
Great, and Jess.
Hello, yes, I'm Jess. I'm Communications Officer at Leeds Community Foundation.
Fantastic. So, can I have the next slide, please, Jess? So I'm just going to briefly take you through the structure of the meeting today, so that you know what to expect and whether you want to stick around, I guess. So first off, welcome everyone. We've done introductions. I'll just take you through a little bit about Leeds Community Foundation, who we are, what we do, and specifically what our role is within the Healthy Holidays programme. And then I'll hand it over to Martin. We'll talk a little bit about risk, which is always really exciting. And then take an opportunity to reflect on the really great work that's happened this year through Healthy Holidays in 2023. And then just really drill down into the specifics of the programme, what the themes are, specific changes for the year ahead to previous years, the specific requirements for the fund, what we're looking for, and what the panel will be looking at when they come to analyse those applications and make the grant decisions. And then just a little bit about the specific practicalities of the application process. So can I just ask everyone again to mute their microphones, just because you don't want to have that on the recording either. And then we'll crack on with the next slide. Right. So we are Leeds Community Foundation. We're an independent grant-making organisation. I know that many of you know this and know us very well, but just for those that don't, I'm not going to read through this whole slide, but as you can see there, we create opportunities for all by working with partners to make a positive impact within communities across Leeds and Bradford, and sometimes further afield. Practically, what that means is that we advocate for community organisations, for the communities that they support, and we do that by fundraising and then distributing those funds through grants, such as Healthy Holidays. We have lots of different funders, but in this case, we're working with a statutory funder. The money's coming through the Department of Education, through Leeds City Council, and then through us. As you can see, we give out a lot of money every year, 4.2 million last year, and a significant proportion of that is Healthy Holidays. Great. So I guess the reason we do that is because our vision is to create cities of opportunity for all. We want to support communities, we want to support the vulnerable families that need the support of Healthy Holidays funding. And then a little bit about our values. We're ambitious, we're passionate, we try to be open and honest in everything that we do. And I suppose most importantly for you as applicants, potential applicants, is that we do try to be a responsive partner. So if you do have any questions, any concerns, any confusions, please get in touch with us and we'll help you out. So yeah, I'm going to hand over to Martin now.
Okay, thank you, and good morning, everybody. So I'm going to take you through the specifics of Healthy Holidays and the application process for funding for 2024. Looking at some of the names in the room, I do know that I saw some of you lovely people yesterday at the event at the Carriage Works, where I gave exactly the same presentation twice. So if you do want to stay and listen again, you're very, very welcome. But if you're expecting something different, you're not going to get anything different. It's broadly the same presentation. So starting, as Laurie said, with this is an exciting issue of risk. And really, what I've found is this doesn't really matter to groups. It only really matters to us. But it's a good value set that Leeds Community Foundation has, that really when we go out for grants and offer grants, we've usually got the money already in the bank. That's not the case with this fund. The way this works is the DFE have made a commitment to fund Healthy Holidays in 2024, but they haven't issued the detail of that. They issue the detail in December each year. And there'll be an allocation to Leeds City Council, and then Leeds City Council expect to fund us. So expect all that to work exactly the same it's worked this year. The benefit of of doing it without us having the cash in the bank is it gives us more time for the bidding process to happen. So that's why we're out here doing the bidding process now in October rather than waiting till December. And I think all the feedback from groups is it is helpful to have that additional amount of time, both to write bids, but also if you're successful, it gives you a little bit more time to mobilize so that you're ready for Easter. So there is a bit of a trade-off. We are working to the conditions as we expect them to be in the guidance I'm about to give, but there may be some differences that the government introduce when they send out new guidance for 2024, and we'll talk about those in funding agreements if we have to. But we didn't have to last year, so you know, I'm fairly hopeful that what we're going to say here is the way that things will actually work. So on to the next slide and some reflections on 2023. I think it's been a great year, 2023. From the point of view of the third sector, we reached just over 6,000 young people during the summer holidays. More at Easter, and we're expecting more, of course, at Christmas, and that has been absolutely fantastic. Such an enormous, and I almost try not to focus on a particular provider and something I've seen, but just an enormous variety of activities, a lot of creativity, lots and lots of freelance providers who come in and support organisations achieve that. So I think there is very much a kind of network and an infrastructure of people who make this work. There have been opportunities which have been created by the council and others, such as swimming, openings to things like the council's attractions, Temple Newsam, Rotherton Hall, those sorts of things, as well as lots of trips to the coast, lots of trips to the countryside. You know, really doing the opportunity to open young people to a wider world. So I think we've had a wonderful year in 2023. As part of my work, I get to come and visit a number of projects, and really everything I've seen has been absolutely excellent. Nutrition, kind of building nutrition guidance into programs, the kind of food-wise resources that have been created by the colleagues who did that work, and the food-wise website been really good to help projects with that nutrition guidance. So overall, very good in 2023. So moving on to 2024, two changes really to signal in this year's approach. So the first, hopefully good news, which is that we've managed to increase the grant level this year to 22,000 from the 20,000 it was in 23 and a number of the previous years. Obviously that's not a perfect increase, but I think it is good recognition of the increased costs that providers face. And you know, at LCF we really want the third sector to be sustainable, so it's important that we recognise the changing cost base. The second thing that we're doing is that for this year we are refocusing to only fund full provision of healthy holiday projects. So we will fund projects that provide activity and food to a cohort of children or young people that you recruit into your project. We won't be supporting activity providers in 2024. I think it's fair to say that there was only a small number of activity providers who we could fund with the available resources in previous years. And what we do think has happened this year is that we have developed, as I said earlier, a bit of a marketplace of freelancers and others, freelancers and organisations who are open to provide support to different projects. And our expectation is that the previous providers who've been activity providers will want to provide that to applicants during 2024. But as it says at the bottom of the slide, you'll need to budget for those activity costs in your application. So if you are one of the providers who've benefited from using those colleagues in 23, you'll have to budget for their costs in 2024. The Leeds City Council have produced a brochure or a guide which has listed providers who are available to work with Healthy Holidays providers. And on the basis of the event we held yesterday at the Carriage Works, the council is going to update that, and that will be circulated when it's available. So there will be a resource if you need to find people. But yeah, if there are any queries of that nature, by all means, direct them in my direction. So looking at the programme aims for 2024, now our 7th year of Healthy Holidays, and the broad principle remains unchanged. It's about tackling food insecurity and hunger, isolation and inactivity, which is experienced by too many children in Leeds. And the idea is to fund, support and coordinate local delivery by community organisations. It's about more than just food, very much about a full range of enrichment activities. So that includes art and crafts, sports and games, gardening and harvesting, outdoor crafts, cooking, digital creativity. And activities can be delivered to children alone, mums and dads go home, or it can be delivered to families with parents and carers being part of that. We also look for the scheme to provide emotional and social support to children and families, help them so they don't feel alone, so they don't feel isolated, and also to give that opportunity really to connect with wider services and the wider third sector and statutory projects. On the next slide, I always like to put this slide in just in all the box ticking and bureaucracy of a scheme. I just don't want us to lose sight. This is the school holidays, and it's about young people and children enjoying themselves and having fun. And all the schemes I visit, I see kids having a great time, and that's really what this is about. So yeah, I want to keep in mind that it's about fun. This is the school holidays. It's not about catching up on maths and English. It's not about curriculum objectives. It's about children and young people enjoying themselves. Yeah, they might learn something as they go along, but the purpose is about fun. So we also need to meet the needs that we face in Leeds, and I'd say that we've got a huge amount, and probably over the last year or so, a growing amount of need in the city. It is over 30,000 children and young people who are entitled to free school meals, and their families, their communities are the ones which have really been impacted by the cost of living crisis. And certainly all the reports I've received from providers and more generally is that those needs really do impact, and they don't just impact in the poorest areas of the city. Children on free school meals are right across the city, and so we do need a programme that is citywide. We need projects in all 33 wards in the city. And we also need projects which meet the needs of both primary and secondary school age groups. Healthy Holidays goes up to the age of 16, year 11. In the provision we have at the moment, very roughly, for every 2 places in primary, we have 1 place in secondary. So I just really want to make that point that we are very much open to applications for secondary school children. Not saying at all that we want less schemes in relation to primary, because we don't. We need that full balance. It's about well-being and mental health. It's about an opportunity to engage, and it's about wider support for families, and really fitting, and this is so brilliant really, in the third sector, into a wider network of engagement and support which the third sector is able to offer. So that's about needs in Leeds. Healthy Holidays itself, we've already said it's funded by the Department for Education. They use the Holiday Activity and Food Programme. So if you Google those words, you'll see all the fine words that the national government issue about healthy holidays. It is for children and young people in the Leeds Metropolitan District who are in receipt of benefit-related free school meals, and really want to emphasise this 85% target, that in the young people that you are meeting, and I said target, actually it's a requirement. we need you to meet 85% of your provision going to families who are on benefit related free school meals. And we have 15% of places that can reach families, including SEND children, including people who generally are facing poverty but don't qualify for free school meals. But absolutely, it is about that 85% being on free school meals. The provision is for Easter, summer and Christmas only, not half term. I mean, I think every year I get the message, quite rightly, from providers that they'd really like to provide it at half term, and we'd really like to fund it at half term, but the DfE do not agree. And so we'll keep making that point nationally, and if that's one of the changes that comes in the guidance, then we'll cross that bridge. But I'm afraid at the moment, very clear, it's for those three main holidays. And then we have the required dates. So we're looking for Easter, a week's provision. That's a 4-day week. So 4 days at Easter and 4 hours a day. I do want to kind of preemptively re-answer a question I got yesterday. Someone did say to me, "Oh, we've got some issues with our way we organise. We can only do 3 3/4 hours." No, this is where the line is in terms of funding. You need to do 4 hours. A day. So Easter, it's a single week, 4 days at 4 hours a day. I should say, if you want to do more than 4 hours a day, that's absolutely fine. But you can't do less. In terms of the summer, it's 4 weeks, and that's again 4 days, 4 hours. So that's 16 days in the summer, and then at Christmas time you can do 1 week, and that again is 4 days, 4 hours. So when we come to look at your applications, we will, as assessors, be looking at value for money and the right balance. I wanted to say that just because there's no tricks really involved in this. This is a volume program. We're looking to get as many places as we can, but equally we want those places to be of good quality. So we will look at that, but absolutely we will look at the right balance. So the first things we'll look at is this a good program? Is this something that's exciting and interesting? Does it meet the other basic requirements? But then when we get to choose, we will look at the cost per daily place as being one of our metrics. The final point on the side is this links to paid provision and other free provision. So if you offer paid provision, so to people who are not on free school meals, you already offer or you want to offer alongside what you're doing on healthy holidays, that's absolutely fine. We encourage you not to have, in fact, we would really want to see no gap between that provision. So the free school meals children get exactly the same as the paying children, but that is absolutely okay. When it comes to reporting, we only want to know about the free school meals children that we are paying for. We don't want to hear reports about the achievement of the people who are paying, because that's obviously a subset of the provision. And equally, if you're an organisation who, because of your values and because of your fundraising, you're able to deliver more provision for more children than the children we fund, and if that means you can take some children or young people who are not on free school meals, that's absolutely great. But again, when it comes to reporting to us, we don't need to know about that. So those are just some points that I'd make for you there about ways of working, really. Moving on to healthy food. So the aim is very clear that all the children, young people, eat healthily over the school holidays, and we want to increase their knowledge of health and nutrition, both the children and families. So what we're looking for you to provide is a hot, healthy, nutritious meal. And I can't emphasize strongly enough, it's almost always a hot meal that we are looking for. There are very few occasions where we think a cold meal might be acceptable, but the general rule is it should be a hot meal. Say on the slide that it's a hot lunch. Clearly, if you're working with teenagers, that lunch might be later on in the day than what we might normally think of lunchtime if your provision is in the afternoon, but it is about a hot meal that young people should get. Many providers, and we really do encourage the provision of other food, often breakfast food and snacks, drinks, water, juice and smoothies, all those sorts of things. You do need to mirror or exceed the school food standards, and in the guidance on the website there is a link to have a look at them. There's nothing to fear in there. That's very straightforward, and there's also lots of guidance on the Foodwise website which can help you when you're thinking about the food side of things that you want to do. In terms of putting together a budget, and you do need to put together a budget in your application, please budget to get your own food. So if you're going to cook the food yourself, your own team of staff or volunteers, then look at how you're going to buy your ingredients and the costs of actually doing the cooking. And clearly, if you're buying through a supplier, you'll need to get a quote for that support. But we suggest that you actually buy ingredients to cover that food. You can supplement that food with the repurposed offer that comes from Fair Share and Rethink Food. And we know that many of our providers have really good relationships with Fair Share and Rethink, who are supported by the council in the work which they do. We generally look for that food to be available to supplement the offer, so you can give children and families a bit more, and also for food parcels and that type of wider support for children and young people when they're not at your sessions and when families might need support as well. We make the general point that that children need to eat during the holidays, and just not just on the days when they're at the provision. So any food that families can take away is absolutely great. In terms of our other food offers and food providers, the council's catering service, Catering Leeds, does have some capacity to support third sector organisations. So they are a particular supplier who clearly have experience of delivering to the school food standards and do work with a number of our providers. And then the council also supports Hamara and Give a Gift, who are not on my slide, which is my apologies. Hamara and Give a Gift both are funded by the council to provide support to providers on the provision of culturally appropriate food for minority communities. So they are our absolute experts on that and give great help. Final point is, if you are preparing your own food, you do need food hygiene certificates for all your staff and volunteers, and so that's something which you will need to send in with your application. Sorry, I'm getting distracted by the questions, which I'm not supposed to answer as I go on. Let's move on to engaging activities. So yeah, half of it's about food, the other half is about engaging activities. So it's about making sure children are active over the school holidays, that they take part in fun, engaging, enriching activities, spark their imagination, and indeed encourage them to do new things. I think that's important. Things which enable young people to do in groups clearly is a lot of what we see, but equally it can be about individuals. And obviously we're hoping that this keeps children safe, it keeps them not socially isolated, and we also have that help to develop the understanding of nutrition and food. So in terms of the approach, the requirement, and again this is a requirement, is a minimum of 60 minutes of physical exercise per day. That doesn't have to be straightforward sports. It can be creative, it can be dance, it can be running around outside doing different activities. But we do need to see 60 minutes of physical activity per day. But otherwise, we're looking for fun and engaging health activities for children and young people, sports, physical activity, dance, outdoor activities, games, arts and crafts, free play, environmental activities, and anything else creative that you guys can think up. And I know that those few bullet points don't capture all the things that already are offered on healthy holidays. So yeah, we're absolutely open for new ideas. As I said, I think a bit earlier, the activities can be for the kids on their own or accompanied by a parent or carer. We certainly do encourage cooking to be one of the activities so that we can improve confidence to make healthy meals and affordable meals. And as part of that, to introduce children to new flavours and new foods that they might not have previously tried. The 4 hours a day, I've already laboured that point in my earlier remarks. And then on the next one, we're just reflecting on supporting children and families. And so, yeah, clearly it's not the expectation that all our projects will meet all the needs of families, but we really do know that Healthy Holidays providers become trusted among the families which they work with. And so you've got a perfect opportunity really to connect people to local council services, local NHS services, other third sector projects in the area that can help them with barriers or issues or practical housing benefits, all those sorts of things. You know, we would look to projects to be well connected locally so that things become more sustainable in our communities. So the next slide is about eligibility. Are you eligible to apply? And so this fund is open to community groups, charities, social enterprise, and other charitable organisations from the third sector. I probably should have said earlier, if you're a school in the room, you're in the wrong meeting. There's a separate process for schools to apply for Healthy Holidays. So don't apply via the Leeds Community Foundation links. So you need to have a constitution or other relevant governing document. You must have a management committee, a board of directors, or a board of trustees with at least 3 unrelated people, none of whom must have significant control. And I know some of this stuff can be a pain, but we do actually check stuff on the Charity Commission website. So please make sure that all your details are up to date on your Charity Commission submissions. And then you obviously need a bank account that we can pay the money into, which is in the name of the group, and you have at least 2 unrelated signatories. So these are all fairly standard funding controls that we apply. Organisations can apply for a single project, and the vast majority of our offer is via people doing one project, but you can apply for more than one project with a maximum of 5. And that gives a number of opportunities. We certainly have providers who deliver in different places in the city, and that means it helps our reach. So that's something which the panel is interested in. We have had providers who have provided one scheme for primary school children and a second scheme for secondary school children, and that's been a way to kind of improve the reach into secondary. And then we have had partnership bids where an organisation has kind of nurtured a newer organisation who doesn't meet these other eligibility requirements on the slide, so they can do it under the umbrella of an experienced provider. And again, if that helps us reach people who we wouldn't otherwise reach, then that's something which we are happy to consider, and we have done in previous years. So just moving on to really summarise what I've already said about grant funding in 2024. Fun activities, a nutritious hot meal for every child with the wider food offer, building nutrition education into your approach, a week at Easter, 4 weeks in the summer, a week at Christmas. I think one thing I haven't said already is that you do require a safeguarding policy. Again, there's guidance about that on the Leeds Community Foundation website. And if you need to talk to someone about that, you can talk to me so that we make sure we can signpost you to the right resources. You need your food hygiene certificate. And then, as I say, value for money, great provision, helping as many families as possible. That's what the panel will be looking at, and the cost per day will be one of the metrics that the panel will look at. We're looking at wider support and really to encourage you to make as many links as possible to other folks in your community, in the area that you're going to work with. So that might be local schools, and local schools often are a really good way of getting referrals into your provision. Links with the community hubs and other council services, links with other third sector groups, and people who can refer people in. I think the more links that you're able to make is so much the better. Our supporting partners, clearly Leeds City Council are a massive supporting partner. They do Healthy Holidays activities through Breeze. Active Leeds and the leisure centres have done the swim offer, which will be rolled out as we get into 2024. Places like Lotherton Hall and Temple Newsome, all of that sort of stuff is part of the wider offer. And as I said, there'll be a brochure summarising some of this stuff. And then I've also already spoken about the food providers listed on the last bullet point there. So on to your applications. What can you include? So your activity can include the costs of the applications can include the activity costs, so the expertise that you require to buy in, your own staff, any hire of appropriate venues or equipment. It can include, and it should include, the cost of the food that you're being provided. We would expect you to have a firm plan about how you will source the ingredients which you will need. It should include your staff costs, your volunteer expenses, and including in that the costs of planning, the costs of admin, the cost of running your organisation need to be part of those costs. So shopping time, food preparation, the cost of the training, etc., etc. We at LCF want third sector organisations to be sustainable, and that means the cost of your organisation need to be spread across the different projects that you run. This is in essence a revenue programme, but you can budget for modest capital items that you might need. So if you need items of catering or sports equipment, you can apply for those, but not larger items such as computers. So that's the sort of things that you can include. So coming towards the end, you'll be pleased to know the process is the last thing. So the application form is now available on the LCF website. I would really strongly encourage you to write a note first of how your proposed project meets the eligibility criteria of the of Healthy Holidays before you go in to fill in the form, and then do a check back to make sure that all the points that you've made on your own plan have been picked up in the application form. I'm saying that because one of the frustrations for us is from time to time is, yeah, we think you've meeting all the criteria, but you haven't actually said it in your application. So really, if you can double check, that is enormously helpful. Once you have so while you're preparing your application, if you need any help, first of all, on the eligibility side, if you can write to the colleagues in the grants team at the grants email address. And if it's a more general inquiry about Healthy Holidays, then it's the Healthy Holidays email address at the bottom. That will come to me, and I'll look to get back to you as quickly as I can if there are any queries. Closing date for application is the 24th of November. We're then going to spend December assessing, and the panel will meet in January of 2024. So we hope to get back to providers by February of 2024, which gives you time to mobilise for Easter in 2024. So that is the presentation. I will draw breath and we can take some questions, Laurie.
Yeah, so we have a few questions in the chat, so I'll just run through those first. If anybody else has a question they want to ask right now, if you could just raise your digital hand, and after we've gone through the chat questions, we'll go around to you in turn if that works for everybody. So starting off with a couple of questions from Fran from the old fire station, which I'm sure a lot of people are also wondering. First off, this is in reference to the minimum of 4 hours per day for 4 days. If we were to provide more than 4 hours support on one day, can this balance out with less on another day, e.g. 4 hours day 1, 4 hours day 2, 4 hours day 3, 0 hours day 4, sorry, 8 hours in the first day, if you know what I mean.
No, we need to see 4 hours, at least 4 hours provided on each day. That's the baseline for the project.
Okay, and then another question in regards to what is considered value for money by the panel in terms of the cost per place per child.
Yeah, I'm not going to get too deep into this because I don't think that's fair. I think what we found last year was we had a spread. We had some projects that came in with a daily rate that worked out at over £70. I won't be breaching any confidences by saying that project didn't get funded. The scheme doesn't stretch to that level. We also had some projects that came in under £20. Now the projects at the very low level were volunteer-led projects, and we're very happy to receive applications for volunteer-led projects. But we expect these to be projects that use staff and are appropriately resourced. So I've given you the top and the bottom. I think in terms of what the panel will do and what we did last year, and I think this is the key point, is looking at the line. It's looking at the line to when we've got to the point where we kind of spent up all the budget. Do we fund this project or that project, or the ones that are near the line? At that point, then looking at the value for money is an important consideration.
Fran, you have your hand up, so I assume that's in response.
Yeah, sorry, Martin. There's sort of a bit more clarification would be really useful, because last year we weren't successful in receiving funding, and one of the reasons we were cited with that we weren't offering value for money, and our amount per day per child falls kind of roughly in between the two amounts you've just mentioned. So I'm trying to work out whether how much lower do we need to try and get.
Yeah, and I'm trying to resist giving that information out as a criteria. I think what I am saying is, look at the number of children that you're supporting, which clearly impacts on the daily rate that you achieve as a project. And I think let me put it in this way: the projects that fell the wrong side of the line I think they might have been better value projects if they'd looked at if they'd supported a few more children. That in essence was probably the feedback that we could give from last year.
And just to say as well, there's always a caveat to the cost per beneficiary, in that we recognise that a lot of projects need high levels of staffing depending on the children that they're working with, and as long as that is clearly explained and clearly demonstrated, no one is going to be punished or ruled ineligible for that reason.
Yeah, I mean, just to add to that, I mean, certainly there are. There was a point which I didn't make, which I made yesterday, which I'll just make now, which is some projects bring other money into healthy holidays. That's absolutely not a requirement of of your applications. But where people do bring money in bring money into the project from elsewhere, so match funding in essence, we don't take that into account when we're doing this value for money calculation. So we're only looking at the Healthy Holidays resources. But just to be absolutely clear, if people do a blisteringly good application that's meeting a particularly important unmet need in the view of the panel, then we would look at funding that project, which is why I gave the higher level number, which I gave when I spoke a few minutes ago. I'm not saying that I want projects that are £68, but if a project comes in which is high cost, but is doing something really special, then clearly the panel would look at that and try and balance things out.
Great. So moving on, because we've got some more questions. We had one in response to the list of providers given in the presentation from Pavel Lubovich, asking if we have any providers providing kosher food specifically. I see that somebody's responded saying that they know an organisation that does. It's very kind, but just to ask the question here as well.
Yeah, so I mean, I think my answer to that is certainly we in 2023, one of our organisations is an organisation that is an organisation that comes from the Jewish faith, and so that there certainly is kosher provision in that particular provider's offer. My expectation is that the cultural food offer support from the council would provide information on kosher food as it does with other religious denominations, if that's the right phrase.
Right. So then one from PE Partner about the turnout for schemes aimed at secondary pupils, because they've discussed it with some partners but worry about no-shows in this group. Now I know we haven't noted that particularly in terms of 2023 attendances, but Martin, if you've got anything to add.
Yeah, I mean, I think again, I didn't say this in the presentation because it's not really fundamentally important to the application process, but the government is asking us to monitor the number of no-shows and people are not attending the schemes. And I've certainly talked to people about how they manage that, the extent to which people overbook to compensate for non-attendance, things like that. I don't think in the third sector there is a general pattern. I think there's variations depending on how people work. I think quite often providers, I'm looking at some of you in this room who have worked with groups of young people over the years. Often you're seeing families from year to year, and that kind of supports attendance as you go through. So I haven't seen a general trend in relation to secondary provision in the third sector. So that would be my answer. But there is another monitoring question that we get asked by the government about. Effectively, they don't want to fund places that aren't going to be used. That would be their hope.
Yep. So then one from Dave Monk. What consideration is made for several projects in the same location? I'm assuming that's panel considerations. Let me know if wrong, Dave.
Yeah, I mean, I think the key thing we would say is that there are over 30,000 children on free school meals. That's an enormous number, and I have never come across the idea that we are actually meeting the needs of all the children in any ward or any neighbourhood where people are providing projects. So it certainly is the case that in different parts of the poorer areas of the city, we have funded multiple projects in past years, and alongside those projects there are school schemes, and alongside those projects there are council schemes, and there are plenty of children and young people to reach. So we would be wanting to look at a spread, but if there are multiple, I would equally expect there to be multiple projects in some of the poorer neighbourhoods of the city.
Thank you. One from Phoenix Dance. Can you input costs in the budget for your application for essential staff training that is not just related to food hygiene, e.g. personal care?
yes, you can include training that you need to include in your costs. I mean, clearly you are, the limiting factor is the £22,000 maximum that we have this year.
Yep. And then just a final thing in the chat, one from Justin T. So your connection dropped off and you missed the rough benchmarks, just so that we don't repeat the conversation for even just for the transcript of the meeting. It will be in the recording, but Justin, if you want to just drop us a line separately and get that information, you're very welcome to as well, if that's okay. Grant, so that's all of the questions in the chat. Does anybody have a question that they'd like to raise here? As I say, the slides will be distributed and the meeting itself will eventually be put online as well. So if you do have time to reflect and come up with some more questions, please do just get in touch with either the grants email or Leeds Community Foundation or the Leeds Healthy Holidays email. And that's all available on the website with the application form as well. So, okay, I'm just going to give a final 10 seconds to anyone for last minute questions. Great. So in that case, thanks so much everybody for your time today. I hope this was practical and useful. If it wasn't, let us know so we can improve. And yeah, hopefully we'll see you all soon. Have a great day.